The dinner had barely begun when Richard Coleman slammed his glass down. "Get out of my house," he barked, voice slicing through the laughter of his guests. Every eye turned as an elderly man in a worn gray suit, Mr. Harris, Emma's father, froze in shock. He had only stood to propose a quiet toast. "Richard," he said softly, "I wanted to thank you for giving me a place in your company. It means—" Richard cut him off with a smirk. "Place? Old man, you're a burden. You've been living off my generosity long enough. Security, throw this foolish old man out." The hall fell silent. The sound of expensive shoes scuffing marble echoed as guards moved forward. Emma rose halfway, trembling. "Richard, please, he's my father." Richard turned sharply. "Then go with him if you care so much. This empire doesn't need sentiment." Phones were already recording. Guests whispered. The old man stumbled as the guards shoved him through the golden doors into the pouring rain. His torn bag hit a puddle with a heavy splash. Outside, thunder rolled, but it couldn't drown out his daughter's gasp. The cameras captured everything: the cruelty, the silence, the humiliation. And in that same silence, something deeper began to stir. A truth Richard never imagined. Because the man he just threw out like a stranger wasn't the poor, broken father-in-law he believed. He was a man hiding an empire, a secret multi-billionaire who had built legacies under other names, and who had just watched his own son-in-law destroy himself in front of the world. What happens when a man who thinks he owns everything throws out the one person who actually owns it all? This is the story of how a wicked husband threw his wife's father out, unaware he was a secret multi-billionaire. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The chandelier shimmered over a 12-seat table in the Coleman mansion, where laughter, silverware, and shallow praise filled the air. Cameras from society reporters flashed as Richard Coleman raised his glass. "To power," he declared, voice booming. "To the empire we built from nothing." At his right sat Emma Coleman, his wife, elegant, silent, her fingers tracing the stem of her glass. Beside her, her aging father, Mr. Harris, adjusted his tie, the same one he'd worn when he still designed half the city's skyline. His eyes, gentle but proud, searched his daughter's face for reassurance. At the other end, Clara Reed, Richard's PR director and rumored mistress, leaned toward investor Gordon Tate, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear. "If I were him, I'd retire the old man before he ruins the brand image." Laughter rippled through the guests. Patrick Owens, a board member, Karen Lewis, the neighbor who lived to gossip, and Henry Cole, the media consultant live-streaming the dinner for publicity. Mr. Harris stood slowly, frail hands gripping his wineglass. "I just wanted to thank my son-in-law for allowing me to contribute to the new tower design. It reminds me of—" Richard slammed his palm against the table. "Contribute?" he scoffed. "You mean waste my resources with your sentimental drawings?" Silence. Fork stopped. Emma's eyes widened. "Richard, he only meant—" "Sit down," Richard hissed. His stare was sharp enough to cut marble. He rose, the room falling still except for the distant hum of cameras. "This old man has been living off my generosity for years. I paid his bills. I gave him shelter. And this is how he thanks me? By pretending to matter?" Clara folded her arms, smirking. "He's outdated, Richard. Let's not embarrass the company with nostalgia." Gordon Tate chuckled. "Innovation needs new blood." Richard pointed toward the guards standing by the doorway. Ryan Carter and Jared Stone, his security detail. "Throw this foolish old man out of my house." Gasps broke out. Karen Lewis covered her mouth but didn't intervene. Mr. Harris's voice trembled. "Son, I designed the structure that gave you this fortune. I only wish to toast your success." Richard's face twisted with rage. "Toast this!" He kicked Harris hard in the leg, sending the elderly man stumbling backward. Then, with venom in his tone, he spat directly onto Harris's shoe. "You're nothing but a relic of the past." The crowd froze. Cameras flashed. Emma shot up, tears welling. "Stop it! He's my father. Richard turned on her. Then go with him. This empire doesn't need weak people. The guards grabbed Harris by the arms. The old man's torn bag slipped, scattering faded blueprints across the polished floor. The sketches fluttered like fallen memories. A tower, a bridge, a signature marked Harris Designs, 1998. No one moved. Even Cynthia Blair, one of Emma's so-called friends, whispered, "It's just business," while adjusting her pearls. The guards dragged Harris toward the door. Rain flashed outside the tall windows. Before stepping out, the old man steadied himself, eyes locked on his son-in-law. "Power without decency destroys itself, Richard." Richard barked a cold laugh. "Get him out of here before he infects the air." The doors burst open. The sound of the storm filled the hall. They threw Harris out, his body hitting the wet pavement. Thunder cracked. Rain swallowed his cry. Phones filmed the scene. Mark Dyer, a journalist guest, whispered to his camera, "The great Richard Coleman just kicked his father-in-law out into the storm." Emma stood motionless. Her lip quivered, but she didn't speak. Her eyes glimmered with something stronger than fear. A quiet, dangerous stillness. The silver locket around her neck caught the lightning, glowing for half a second before the screen faded to black. The wicked husband believed he'd erased an old man's dignity, unaware the man he humiliated owned more than he ever would. Outside, as lightning struck the sky, the old man opened his eyes against the rain and whispered, "Let him keep his throne for now." Upstairs, the house was silent, except for the storm whispering against the tall windows. The laughter from downstairs had turned into an awkward hum, the kind people make when they don't know how to handle shame. Emma pushed open the bedroom door. The lights flickered against her pale face. Her hands shook as she wiped away the mascara that had mixed with rain. The reflection in the mirror didn't look like a woman anymore. It looked like a shadow wearing a diamond necklace. Nora Green, her personal assistant, hovered by the doorway, holding a folded towel and a tremor in her voice. "Mrs. Coleman, you need to change. The guests are still downstairs pretending nothing happened." "Let them pretend," Emma said quietly. "That's what this house is built on. Pretending." She sat at the vanity, the thunder outside echoing through the walls like a slow heartbeat. In the mirror's edge sat a framed photograph of her father at the groundbreaking of Harris Tower, smiling in a blue helmet. She touched the glass. For the first time, her silence cracked. "He built everything with his hands, and I let a man like Richard throw him into the rain." Nora placed the towel on the table, unsure if she should speak. "He's strong, ma'am. He'll forgive you." Emma looked up sharply, eyes red. "That's what scares me. He always forgives, even when he shouldn't." The phone on her dresser buzzed. "Dad." She froze, staring at the screen, the name glowing against the dark wallpaper. Her thumb hovered, then pressed decline. She whispered to the mirror, "I can't face him yet." Another buzz, this time a message from Dr. Miles Bennett, the family doctor. "Your father collapsed outside the gate. He's stable. Someone already paid the bills in advance." Emma frowned. "Someone?" Nora stepped closer. "Who could have done that? Mr. Coleman canceled all family coverage last month." Emma's reflection stiffened. "Then who knew my father's full name? His real name?" Her mind trailed off. Harris & Co., the company Richard renamed. The silence grew heavy again. Raindrops slid down the window like streaks of guilt. Emma lifted the locket from her neck. Inside, beneath the tiny photo, was a folded scrap of paper, her father's handwriting from years ago. "Protect our legacy. Trust no one who values power over people." Her voice broke into a whisper. "I didn't protect anything, Dad, but I will." Outside, the thunder softened into distant rumbling, as though the storm itself was retreating. Emma rose slowly, steadier now. Her eyes, once glassy with tears, hardened into quiet steel. She turned toward the mirror again, and for the first time, she didn't look away. The reflection behind her shimmered briefly with the glow of her phone. A new message appearing on screen. "Call me. We need to talk. Dr. Miles Bennett." That night's sleep refused to come. The storm had passed, but thunder still rolled inside Emma's chest. She sat by the window, the city below gleaming with the indifferent glitter of wealth. Dr. Miles Bennett's text replayed in her mind. "He's stable. Stable. The word meant alive, but not safe. Her eyes fell on the old chest near the foot of her bed, the one her father had sent years ago with a note she never opened. She pulled it closer, unlatched it, and the faint scent of cedar rose like a ghost from another life. Inside lay sketches of bridges, towers, and homes. Her father's world before Richard Coleman erased his name from it. Each drawing bore a simple signature, Harris & Co. A photograph fluttered free. Her parents, younger, laughing in front of a half-built skyscraper. Her mother, Margaret Harris, wore her construction helmet sideways, teasing him. Her father's arm was wrapped protectively around her, his eyes proud and calm. The same eyes Emma saw in the hospital photo that morning. Her breathing slowed as memories bled through time. She was 9 again, standing in a noisy workshop filled with sawdust and sunshine. Her father knelt beside her, pointing at a blueprint spread across the floor. "Every line matters," he said, tracing the paper with a pencil. "People think buildings make a city. They don't. People do. Build for hearts, not headlines." Back then, the Harris name meant honesty. Their small, firm-designed community schools, not skyscrapers. But ambition had a price. When Harris partnered with a ruthless developer, the man siphoned profits, leaving the firm bankrupt. The press called it mismanagement. Only Emma knew the truth. Her father took the blame to protect the workers he couldn't pay. That was the year her mother died of pneumonia, and the year Richard Coleman appeared. The smooth young broker with promises of safety and stability. Richard's first visit replayed in her mind like a cruel echo. He had walked into their modest living room, expensive shoes leaving prints on the rug. "You have talent, Mr. Harris," he'd said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But you need structure. I can give you that. Through me." Her father had refused then. "I build foundations, not cages." But when Margaret's health declined, money forced him to compromise. Within months, Richard's name stood on the new contracts. Harris & Co. disappeared. The flashbacks ended, leaving Emma trembling beside the open chest. She now saw it. Her father's humility was never failure. It was restraint. He'd walked away from glory because decency mattered more, and she'd married the man who stole both his legacy and his name. She pressed the old photo to her heart. "You were never weak," she whispered. "You were testing all of us." Lightning flashed far away, turning the window into a mirror. Her reflection stared back, eyes steadier, mouth firm. The quiet broke with the faint buzz of her phone. Another message glowed. "You need to see me. There's more you don't know. Dr. Miles Bennett." Emma rose, determination replacing despair. Outside, the city lights dimmed briefly, as if the world itself were holding its breath for what she was about to discover next. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please, take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel. You're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from and what part of this story spoke to your heart? The next morning, the glass towers of downtown reflected the kind of light that only wealth could command. At the top floor of Coleman Group headquarters, Richard Coleman strode into the boardroom as if the floor existed to hold his ego. Assistants scattered before him. The staff had learned to read the temperature of his moods. Silence meant safety. Words meant wounds. He stopped beside the long marble table where 12 directors waited. The company logo, a silver C wrapped around a skyline, glimmered behind him. "Let's get one thing straight," he said, voice clipped, precise. "Compassion doesn't build empires. Control does." No one dared breathe. At his right sat Clara Reed, the PR director everyone called the Velvet Knife. Her perfume announced her before her words did. She leaned close enough for the cameras to catch it. "The press wants a statement about the dinner incident," she whispered. "We can spin it as protecting the company image." Richard smirked. "Tell them I protect what's mine. That's all they need to know." Across the table, Gordon Tate, chief financial officer, cleared his throat. "Sir, the merger with Arcturus Tech still needs confirmation of share origin. Their team's asking for documentation signed by... Richard cut him off. Documentation is whatever I decide it is. Gordon swallowed his protest. Around him, Patrick Owens, head of investments, exchanged a nervous glance with Victor Hale, the social media strategist who lived to post Richard's staged generosity online. They all knew the truth. The company's money moved through shadow accounts that began and ended with Richard's name. Richard walked to the window, the city stretching beneath him like property. By next quarter, he said, this company becomes Coleman Innovations. Harris & Coors is dead. Sentiment won't save an empire. The name Harris fell into the air like ash. For a moment, even Clara hesitated. You sure you want to erase it entirely? She asked softly. He turned to her, eyes narrowing. History is for the weak. I build the future. Downstairs, clerks whispered as the elevator doors closed. He's on a tear again, one murmured. Someone should tell him the auditors are asking questions. But no one did. Power made them deaf. In the quiet hum of his office, Richard loosened his tie and opened his laptop. Dozens of files filled the screen. Forged transfers, digital seals, signatures that didn't belong to him. He scrolled through them like trophies. Then an unread email appeared at the top. Subject line glowing red. Signature mismatch. Please verify source. Sender, Ethan Ward, junior financial analyst. Richard's smile faded. He didn't know Ethan. A knock followed. Henry Cole, his media consultant, poked his head in. Sir, journalists are asking about Mr. Harris's hospitalization. Richard closed the laptop. Handle it. Tell them the old man's irrelevant. As Henry left, the screen lit again. Another notification blinked. Message copied to external recipient. Richard stared at it, confusion hardening into anger. Somewhere inside the system, someone was watching him. The camera lingers on the email window as the reflection of Richard's face darkens across the glass. The empire beginning to crack, one message at a time. Evening rain had turned the city into silver smoke. Cars hissed through flooded streets. Thunder walked across the skyline. Outside Coleman Tower, an old man leaned against the glass doors that bore his stolen name. Harris & Co. had once gleamed there. Now it read, Coleman Innovations. The letters seemed to sneer. Mr. Harris clutched a rolled blueprint to his chest, the paper damp, his breath shallow. He'd come only to look, just to see what his life had become in another man's hands. A passing security guard recognized him. Sir, you can't stand here. Company policy. I built this, Harris murmured. His voice was almost lost under the rain. Every line, every beam. Company policy, the guard repeated, holding the door. You need to move on. The wind shoved him backward. He steadied himself on a lamppost, coughing. The rain felt heavier now, the kind that bruised the skin. Across the street, a white Bentley slowed. Inside, Clara Reed scrolled through her phone beside Richard. It's trending again, she said. Video from the dinner. People love your confidence. Richard glanced out. For a fraction of a second, his eyes met the old man's. Recognition flickered and vanished into arrogance. He hit the wiper switch. Keep driving. Clara laughed softly. He's still haunting you. Ghosts don't own stock, Richard replied. He's finished. The car rolled on, taillights bleeding red through the storm. At the same moment, Emma's phone rang in the back seat of another car racing through traffic. Nora was driving, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The hospital just called, she said. He collapsed outside the tower. Emma's voice cracked. Which hospital? St. Augustine's. They said he's stable, but they sound worried. Emma stared out the window, the city lights blurring through tears. He went there because of me, because of Richard. Rain hammered harder. Lightning split the sky, white and merciless. At the emergency entrance, Dr. Miles Bennett, mid-40s, practical yet kind, met her with soaked hair and tired eyes. He's conscious now, he said gently. The collapse was from exhaustion and stress. But something unusual. His file shows full private coverage. Someone already paid. Emma blinked. That can't be right. My husband canceled everything. Dr. Bennett handed her the receipt. The payment came from an anonymous offshore trust, the Harris Foundation. Emma whispered, He paid his own bills? Dr. Bennett's expression softened. Whatever he's hiding, Mrs. Coleman, it's protecting you too. Inside the ward, the monitors beeped steady but slow. Harris lay pale beneath the white sheets. His blueprint rolled beside him like a relic. Emma took his hand. I should have stopped him, she said through tears. I should have walked out with you. Harris's eyes opened just enough to meet hers. Don't waste energy on guilt. Build something better from it. His voice was a whisper, but the line hit like thunder. Outside, lightning illuminated the tower's name again. Coleman Innovations. Then the lights flickered, half the sign going dark, leaving only one word visible through the rain. Harris. Emma stared through the hospital window at that half-lit name and breathed. Maybe the world's finally remembering who really built it. Morning light slipped through the blinds at St. Augustine Hospital, soft and golden after the storm. The night of chaos had left the air heavy but still. Machines hummed gently. The rhythm of a slow heartbeat filled the room. Emma sat at her father's bedside, her head bowed against his arm. The sleepless hours had drawn fine lines around her eyes, but they couldn't dull the quiet strength growing behind them. Mr. Harris stirred, his voice rough but steady. You didn't need to stay all night, sweetheart. I did, she whispered. I thought I was going to lose you. You'll lose nothing that's yours, he said, managing the faintest smile. Before she could answer, the door opened. A tall woman in a charcoal suit stepped in. Poised, confident, mid-40s. Her name tag read, Ruth Lane. Good morning, Mr. Harris. We received confirmation from Zurich. Your primary accounts have been reactivated. Legal control is fully restored. Emma looked up sharply. Accounts? What accounts? Her father's eyes closed briefly, as though deciding how much of the world to let back in. It's time you knew, he said quietly. Ruth moved closer, placing a tablet on the table beside the bed. Its screen glowed with rows of company logos. Arcturus Energy, Northwell Tech Holdings, Blue Horizon Capital, and more, all registered under one parent trust. Emma blinked. These are yours? Her father nodded. I built them under different names after the collapse. Every patent, every partnership came from the ideas Richard thought were worthless. Her breath caught. You're the anonymous investor. He met her gaze with calm pride. Anonymous, yes. Power isn't meant to be loud. I kept it hidden to see who people became when they thought I was powerless. Ruth smiled faintly. Your father owns controlling stakes in 9 corporations across 3 continents. Most people in this city work for him. They just don't know it. For a moment, the world went silent. The rain outside had stopped completely. Only the low hum of the machines filled the space. Emma's fingers trembled against the tablet. You could have told me. If I had, he said gently, you would have lived protected, not prepared. I needed you to see what pride does to people like Richard. You've seen it now. The door opened again. Martin Blake, a gray-haired lawyer with kind eyes, entered carrying a thin envelope sealed with gold wax. Sir, these are the finalized share transfers for Coleman Group. Once signed, the holdings revert to your name, and by extension, to your daughter. Emma stepped back, stunned. Wait, you own Coleman Group? Her father gave a quiet nod. He was never the owner, just a caretaker who mistook the keys for the kingdom. She pressed her hands to her mouth, emotions spilling between disbelief and fury. He threw you out, and you still let him believe he won. That's the beauty of truth, Harris said softly. It doesn't need to shout. It waits. He reached for her hand. Now it's your turn to decide what to do with it. Emma looked down at the pen beside the envelope. Her reflection shimmered in its gold surface as she whispered, Then let's stop waiting. By evening, the rain had given way to a pale sunset. Golden light poured through the hospital window, settling across Emma's face as she sat in silence beside the sealed envelope. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant in awakening truth. She hadn't said a word since signing her name on her father's document. The pen had trembled in her hand at first, then steadied as the weight of inheritance settled on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed. It was Nora, her assistant, loyal and sharp-eyed. Ma'am, she said softly, Clara Reed's been spotted leaving the Coleman Tower with boxes, and the media's saying the old man you kicked out might sue. Emma stood, the quiet of her movement making Nora's voice falter. They think he'll sue? Yes, public sympathy's shifting, but Richard's controlling the narrative. He's calling you unstable, saying you're unfit to manage your own finances. A bitter smile touched Emma's lips. He's terrified. That's what liars do when truth knocks. The door opened. Ruth Lane, her father's financial counsel, entered carrying a leather portfolio. We've traced the Coleman accounts. Every forged signature leads back to Richard. He's transferred nearly 30 million into personal holdings. Nora gasped. 30 million? Ruth nodded. All from your father's legacy. Emma's hand tightened around the armrest. For a moment, the woman who had cried in the rain seemed to disappear. Then let's bury his lies with receipts. Ruth opened the folder, sliding out printouts of digital transactions. We can't go public yet. You'll need to control the board first. Take back the legal seat your father never resigned from. I will. Her tone was calm, almost frightening in its composure. Ruth studied her for a long moment. You sound like him, like your father. Emma looked out the window. Maybe that's what he was waiting for. At that moment, the door cracked open again, and Dr. Miles Bennett entered, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion behind his eyes. He's asking for you, he said quietly. He wants you to see something. Down the hall, the elder Harris lay awake, a small safe box on the bed beside him. This was your mother's, he said as she approached. Inside was a ring, simple silver, engraved with the words, Legacy through Mercy. He placed it in her palm. Power will tempt you to destroy him, but mercy will make you unforgettable. Emma's eyes glistened. Mercy isn't weakness, Dad. It's strategy. Harris smiled faintly. Then you've learned. As she left the room, the sun broke through the clouds fully, flooding the hallway in white gold light. Outside in her car, Emma scrolled through her phone, the screen filled with Richard's smug face from a new press conference. My wife's family has no claim here. Her expression didn't change. She forwarded the forged contracts to an encrypted folder labeled Truth Release. Then she whispered, You have no idea who you just crossed. A progress bar on her phone began uploading. 1%, 2. The war had begun. Morning sunlight spilled through the high glass walls of Coleman Tower, the reflection of wealth shimmering like armor over corruption. The media buzzed outside the building's gates. Headlines called him the unshakable billionaire. Richard Coleman basked in it. He adjusted his tie, leaned back in the leather chair, and admired his own face on the live broadcast playing silently across the office screen. Across from him sat Isabella Moore, striking, confident, the kind of woman who treated attention as currency. Her red silk dress was the loudest thing in the room. The press adores you again, she said, crossing her legs slowly. The pity angle worked. Poor husband betrayed by his unstable wife. Richard smiled, the kind that never reached his eyes. People love power, Isabella. They forgive anything wrapped in confidence. She laughed softly. And what about her father? They say he's still in the hospital. He's nothing, Richard replied, standing to pour himself a drink. A foolish old man with delusions of relevance. He's lucky I didn't press charges for trespassing. Isabella tilted her head. You enjoy stepping on people who built the ground you walk on, don't you? He turned to her, voice cold. I enjoy winning. But the calm in his tone couldn't hide the subtle tremor in his hand. His phone buzzed. A message from Gordon Tate, the CFO. We need to talk. Urgent irregularities found in the original ownership files. Richard locked the screen, pretending not to see it. Lunch at La Bella later? He asked, masking the crack in his voice. Isabella rose gracefully. Of course, but don't let your empire drown while you toast your reflection. She walked out, perfume trailing behind her like smoke. The moment the door closed, Richard's face hardened. He opened the message. Attached were 3 scanned contracts, everyone bearing his forged signature beside the initials, H or H. He frowned. H. Harris. For the first time, his certainty wavered. Across the city, inside a quiet conference room at the Harris Foundation, Emma met with Ruth and Nora. On the table lay those same contracts, proof of Richard's theft. Nora whispered, He doesn't know we already have the originals. Emma's gaze was ice. Let him think he's untouchable. Fear tastes better when it ripens. Meanwhile, at the tower, Richard stepped into the corridor, confidence reheated by denial. His loyal PR chief, Clara Reed, met him halfway, phone in hand. "Richard, one question. Who's Ethan Ward?" He stopped. "Who?" "The analyst who sent the audit alert. He's missing. Left the city last night." For a brief second, the Empire's hum faltered. Elevators pinged. Lights flickered. Cameras flashed from the lobby below. The noise of a world beginning to turn. Richard forced a smirk. "Find him. Pay him off." Clara hesitated. "And if he's not for sale?" He straightened his cuffs. "Then bury him with paperwork." But as the elevator doors slid shut, his reflection stared back. And for the first time, it didn't look certain. Micro cliffhanger. His phone vibrated again. A new message appeared from an unknown number. "Truth always comes home. HH." Richard froze, pulse quickening. The cracks had begun. By midweek, the once gleaming world of Coleman Innovations was beginning to sound different. Whispers replaced applause. Smiles became glances. And every closed door seemed to hum with the same question: what's happening to Richard Coleman? On the 21st floor inside the executive lounge, two junior partners whispered over their coffee. "They say the board's calling an emergency audit," one murmured. "Something about falsified signatures." Another leaned closer. "I heard the Harris name is back on the documents, but wasn't that company absorbed years ago?" Across the hall, Gordon Tate, the CFO, stared at his laptop, beads of sweat forming on his temple. On his screen blinked an email from an anonymous account. "Check the source code of the audit files. The truth is buried there." He scrolled and froze. Each file carried metadata signed by HH Trust Holdings. His throat tightened. The initials matched the mysterious HH haunting Richard's inbox. He looked up and saw Clara Reed pacing outside Richard's office, phone pressed to her ear. "The journalists already know," she hissed quietly. "I can't contain it much longer." Inside, Richard's voice rose, echoing through the frosted glass. "You think some gossip can shake me? This empire was built on my name." Clara lowered her tone, her professional mask cracking. "No, Richard. It was built on someone else's. You just stamped yours over it." The argument ended with silence. She walked out, trembling, mascara streaking slightly under her eyes, the first defector leaving his side. Meanwhile, across town at the Harris Foundation, Emma sat surrounded by quiet strength. Ruth Lane, Nora, and Martin Blake, the family lawyer. The mood was calm, controlled. Ruth laid out a printed headline on the table. "Sources question Coleman's ownership structure. Possible forgery under review." Emma studied it, eyes unreadable. "They're sniffing the truth." "Good," Martin nodded. "Your timing's perfect. Once the auditors confirm your father's signature rights, the company reverts under the Harris Trust." Nora leaned forward. "He'll panic when the leak hits." Emma's lips curved faintly. "Then he'll make mistakes. And every mistake will be evidence." The screen on the table flickered as an incoming email appeared. A video attachment labeled "Board Meeting Footage Leaked." Emma pressed play. The clip showed Richard shouting at his directors, his arrogance spilling across the room. "I am this company. Harris is dead." The camera angle caught the disbelief on his board members' faces, and Clara silently walking out mid-meeting. Nora's hand covered her mouth. "He's destroying himself on camera." Emma exhaled slowly, voice steady. "No, he's revealing himself." At that same moment, inside the tower, Richard watched the same video trending on every news feed, disbelief widening his eyes. The phone on his desk wouldn't stop ringing. Headlines flashed across the screen. "Coleman exposed?" He hurled the phone against the wall. It shattered, the sound sharp as judgment. Outside his office window, storm clouds gathered again over the city, dark and heavy, as if drawn by the weight of truth. Micro cliffhanger. Richard's assistant entered timidly, voice trembling. "Sir, the auditors are downstairs. They want to see the original ownership deeds." He turned slowly, face pale. "Those deeds were destroyed." The assistant hesitated. "No, sir. Someone just delivered them. The boardroom of Coleman Innovations looked different that morning. The same table where Richard had once ruled felt colder, smaller. The air carried the thick weight of panic disguised as professionalism. Cameras were banned, but everyone was recording with their eyes. Richard stood at the head of the table in his signature Navy suit, smile stretched tight as glass. "Let's make this quick," he said. "We all know these allegations are baseless." At the far end sat Ruth Lane, calm as marble, flanked by Martin Blake, the family lawyer. Both had arrived uninvited, but with legal authority. Behind them, Emma Coleman stepped into the room. The room stilled. Every whisper died. Her entrance was simple yet unnerving. White blouse, gray blazer, hair pinned back, no jewelry. Power without decoration. Richard's smirk flickered. "You don't belong here, Emma. This is a private board meeting." She walked to the opposite end of the table and placed a sealed folder in front of her. "Private?" Her tone was steady. "Then why does it involve stolen property?" A few directors shifted uncomfortably. Ruth opened the folder, sliding out original deeds and signed certificates. "These are the founding documents of Harris & Co. Inc., the company that preceded this one. They prove the merger was executed under forgery." The directors exchanged looks. Gordon Tate leaned forward, voice dry. "Forgery?" Richard forced a laugh. "That's absurd. Those papers were destroyed years ago." "Destroyed," Ruth said softly. "Or hidden." She turned the final page. Every signature bore two names: Henry Harris, founder, and Emma Harris Coleman, beneficiary. Richard froze. "What is this?" Emma's voice sliced the silence. "It's your reality, Richard. The company you built your empire on belongs to my family. And as of this morning, I've re-registered full ownership under the Harris Trust." A pulse of murmurs spread through the room. Richard slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do this." "You already did," she replied, "when you forged my father's name. When you took what wasn't yours, the law just caught up." Behind her, Ruth handed Martin a stamped court injunction. He placed it gently on the table in front of Richard. "Effective immediately, Mr. Coleman is suspended pending investigation." The color drained from his face. Emma didn't raise her voice. "You threw my father into the rain and called him useless. Now you'll learn what real power looks like when it's silent." Richard looked around for support. None came. Clara Reed stared at the table. Gordon avoided his gaze. Even the security guards at the door waited for instruction. From her. Emma gathered the folder, her tone even. "This company will return to its purpose, integrity over greed. You're no longer welcome here." As she walked toward the exit, Richard shouted after her, voice cracking. "You think this is over?" She paused at the door, turning just enough for the light to catch her eyes. "It's just beginning." Micro cliffhanger. Behind her, the boardroom erupted in noise. Phones ringing, news alerts flashing, and one screen lighting up with the headline, "Emma Harris Coleman named new CEO of Coleman Innovations." The sun had barely risen before the city erupted. Screens flashed. News anchors spoke over each other. Across social media, the name Richard Coleman burned like wildfire. Corporate forgery scandal unfolds. CEO accused of stealing late father-in-law's empire. Exclusive. Leaked footage of boardroom confrontation. Outside Coleman Tower, reporters crowded behind barricades. Microphones glistened under the morning light. Helicopters hovered above, circling like vultures. Inside his penthouse office, Richard stood before the massive window, watching his empire rot in real time. His reflection looked older, desperate. Behind him, Clara Reed placed her phone on the desk, avoiding his eyes. "It's everywhere," she whispered. "You're trending #1 worldwide." Richard spun around. "Damage control. I'll release a statement. I built this empire, Clara. One viral headline won't—" She interrupted, her voice trembling. "The audit confirmed everything, Richard. Every signature, every account. They've frozen your assets. The board has voted you out." He blinked as though language itself had betrayed him. "What did you say?" "I'm sorry," Clara said softly. "You don't run this company anymore." Silence, the sound of rain beginning to fall against the windows filled the room. Soft, rhythmic, final. Richard's temper snapped. He slammed his hand against the desk, sending a glass crashing to the floor. After everything I built, you didn't build it, Clara said, stepping back. You borrowed it, and then you broke it. She turned and left, closing the door with quiet mercy. Alone, Richard looked at the portrait on the wall, himself smiling beside the company logo. He ripped it down. The glass shattered, reflecting his own fractured face. Downstairs, the lobby filled with reporters. The first voice rose. Mr. Coleman, are the documents real? Did you forge your father-in-law's signature? Security tried to block them, but the cameras pushed closer. Flash after flash. Richard's face twitched. This is nonsense, lies. Another question cut through. Is it true your wife now controls the company? The world slowed around him. Cameras froze mid-flash. The hallway seemed to stretch like a tunnel of noise. Outside, on a different floor, Emma stepped into a separate conference room surrounded by quiet order. Ruth Lane stood beside her, flanked by Martin Blake and Nora. Every movement around them was deliberate. No chaos, only control. News screens on the wall played Richard's meltdown live. The crowd laughed as he stumbled through denials. Emma watched without emotion. Turn the volume down, she said softly. Let the noise destroy itself. Nora whispered, He's losing everything. Emma's tone was calm, almost serene. He's losing the illusion of power. That's different. Across the screen, Richard was escorted into a waiting car as reporters shouted questions that blurred into thunder. For the first time in years, Emma exhaled deeply. The air felt lighter. As she walked toward the elevator, the reflection of the company's new name appeared on the wall plaque beside her. Harris Foundation for Renewal. Micro cliffhanger. In the reflection behind her, a flash from a camera caught her calm face. The photo would go viral within hours with a single caption. The woman who took back everything. The courthouse was a battlefield of cameras. Every seat filled. Every journalist waiting for blood. The trial of Richard Coleman versus the Harris Trust had become the nation's favorite redemption story. The arrogant husband finally facing truth. Richard entered in a wrinkled navy suit, wrists trembling, though he tried to hide it. Gone was the confident titan. What remained was a man drowning in his own image. Across the aisle, Emma sat beside her father and Ruth Lane. Her posture was perfect. Chin raised, eyes steady, expression unreadable. No jewelry, no makeup, only clarity. The judge's gavel hit once, and the courtroom fell silent. After reviewing the evidence presented, the judge began, this court finds overwhelming proof of fraudulent ownership transfers, forged signatures, and misappropriation of funds belonging to Harris & Co. Now the Harris Trust Foundation. Richard's breath quickened. His lawyer whispered something about appealing, but even he sounded hollow. The judge continued. Therefore, effective immediately, all holdings, shares, and corporate assets of Coleman Innovations revert to the Harris Trust. Mr. Richard Coleman is hereby charged with corporate fraud, document forgery, and perjury. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed so fast the light became thunder. Richard's voice cracked. You can't do this. This is my company. The judge's tone hardened. Your deceit made it hers. He turned toward Emma. Mrs. Coleman, the court recognizes your rightful ownership and applauds your restraint throughout these proceedings. A brief murmur of admiration rippled through the crowd. Emma simply nodded once. Grace without triumph. Richard's face flushed red with panic. She planned this. She manipulated everyone. No one listened. The prosecutor spoke clearly. Your mistress, Miss Isabella Moore, has submitted a sworn statement confirming she handled the forged signatures at your request. A gasp rippled through the room. Richard froze. What? The door to the witness stand opened, and Isabella stepped in. No red dress this time, only a black blazer and trembling fingers. Her voice quivered. He told me it was routine paperwork. I didn't know it was theft. When I realized, I tried to leave, but he threatened me. Richard's face twisted. You liar! The judge silenced him with one glare. Isabella continued. He promised me the company, the shares, the mansion, everything. But I saw the truth. He used me like he used everyone. Emma's gaze never shifted. Not once. Isabella stepped down, eyes glassy with guilt, then paused before leaving the courtroom. She turned slightly toward Emma and whispered under her breath, "I'm sorry." Emma didn't respond, but her silence carried mercy, the kind that hurts more than anger. The judge's voice cut through again. "Mr. Coleman, your accounts are frozen. The properties under your name are repossessed by the state pending investigation." Richard swayed slightly. "Please, I have nothing left." "Then perhaps," the judge said, "you'll finally understand what it's like to take everything from someone who gave you everything." Two uniformed officers approached. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed louder than the reporter's questions. Richard flinched. "Wait, this can't... Emma, please say something. I loved you." Emma's voice was calm, almost serene. "You loved control. That's not love." The crowd watched as the once powerful billionaire was led through the aisle like a ghost of arrogance passed. The cameras followed every step. The fall of a man who thought he owned the world. Outside, the steps of the courthouse became a stage of poetic justice. The sky broke open with late sunlight. No storm, just clarity. Journalists shouted, "Mrs. Coleman, how does it feel to reclaim your family's legacy?" Emma paused before the microphones, her father's hand steady on her shoulder. "It's not about revenge," she said softly. "It's about restoration. My father built something honest. I'm just giving it back to its rightful place." Her words spread across every network within minutes. The same people who once pitied her now quoted her as a symbol of grace. Meanwhile, blocks away, Richard sat in the back of the police van, wrists cuffed, staring out the window as the city blurred past. He saw billboards once bearing his name replaced by Harris Foundation for Renewal. He saw a photo of Emma on a digital screen. Calm, radiant, powerful. The same crowd that once applauded him now cheered her. Inside the van, his reflection stared back in the dark glass. Hollow, defeated. He whispered, "I had everything." The officer beside him replied quietly, "And you threw it away." The van turned toward the detention center. Reporters followed on motorbikes, cameras flashing like relentless judgment. By evening, the news anchors spoke in unison across networks. Former CEO Richard Coleman sentenced pending full investigation. Assets seized, reputation destroyed. Wife who once suffered humiliation now heads multi-billion-dollar foundation. In her office overlooking the skyline, Emma stood at the window. The city glowed beneath her. Same view Richard once claimed as his. Her phone buzzed with hundreds of messages, congratulations, interviews. She ignored them all. Instead, she lifted her father's ring to the light and whispered, "He's gone, Dad. It's over." From behind her, Ruth spoke quietly. "You didn't just end him, Emma. You ended a legacy of arrogance." Emma smiled faintly, watching the horizon fade into soft gold. "No," she said. "I replaced it." Far below, Richard's prison van disappeared into traffic, swallowed by the very city he once ruled. And on every screen across the nation, one image trended. Emma's calm face under the headline, "Grace After Ruin, the woman who took back everything." The city's light had changed. The storm that once mirrored chaos now reflected calm. Golden skies over glass towers carrying a new name, the Harris Foundation for Renewal. Weeks after the verdict, Emma arrived at the foundation's first public launch, a charity gala held in the same grand ballroom where Richard once humiliated her. Cameras lined the red carpet, but this time, the attention belonged entirely to her. Inside, the crowd applauded as she took the stage beside her father. Her speech was brief and steady. "What was once built on greed," she said, "can be rebuilt on grace." The applause swelled. Lights shimmered. Reporters leaned forward. Then through the crowd's movement, a ripple of unease spread. Someone was at the back entrance, escorted by two security officers. Gasps turned to whispers. Richard Coleman had come. His suit hung loosely on his thinner frame. His wrists bore the faint marks of recent cuffs. The arrogance that once filled his eyes had vanished, replaced by the hollow humility of a man who had lost everything but breath. Security hesitated. Emma raised a hand. Let him through. He walked slowly down the aisle of murmuring guests. Cameras flashed again, but now their tone was pity, not awe. He stopped a few feet from her, breathing hard, eyes glistening under the chandelier's white glow. Emma, his voice cracked. Please! The audience fell silent. Even the music died. He sank to his knees before her. The sound of it, knees meeting marble, echoed like the universe closing a circle. Every flashbulb caught it. The man who once spat on her father now knelt before the daughter. I have nothing, he whispered, tears streaking down his face. No company, no friends, no pride. Just the weight of what I did to you. Emma stood still. For a long time she said nothing. The silence carried more power than any judgment could. He continued, voice trembling. I see you everywhere, on screens and papers, and I realize you became everything I pretended to be. Please forgive me. Let me breathe again. The audience held its breath, waiting for her response. Emma's eyes softened, not with affection, but with comprehension, the kind that sees a broken human being, not a villain. You made me crawl once, she said quietly. Now you kneel because you finally understand what you destroyed. He bowed his head lower, shoulders shaking. I deserve every second of this. She stepped closer, just enough for her words to reach him without a microphone. I forgive you, she said, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. A collective gasp filled the hall. Reporters scribbled. The flashlights burst again. Richard lifted his face, disbelief mingling with shame. Does that mean you'll take me back? Emma's tone was gentle but immovable. No, Richard. Forgiveness isn't return. It's release. He stared at her, realizing the difference between mercy and reconciliation. Tears fell freely now, the last fragments of pride dissolving. She turned to the cameras, her composure flawless. Let this moment remind us, she said clearly, that power means nothing without conscience. The crowd erupted in applause, not for revenge, but for redemption. Emma turned to security. Help him up. The guards lifted Richard slowly, their hands steady but firm. His legs trembled as he stood, head bowed. As they escorted him toward the exit, the ballroom lights caught his face one last time. Pale, tear-streaked, utterly human. He paused at the door, looking back at her. Thank you, he whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Outside, the reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Coleman, what made you forgive him? Her answer was calm, serene. Because carrying hate is heavier than healing. The soundbite would loop across every network by morning. Later that night, alone on the foundation's rooftop, Emma watched the city glow below. The same skyline Richard once claimed as his. She wore no jewels, only her mother's silver ring, gleaming softly under the moonlight. Her father joined her, cane tapping gently against the tiles. You did what many couldn't, he said. Emma smiled faintly. I didn't win by destroying him. I won by not becoming him. He nodded, eyes full of pride. Legacy begins where bitterness ends. Wind brushed her hair as she looked out toward the horizon. No longer the humiliated wife, but the woman who turned pain into purpose. Far below, on a news screen across the street, the viral photo played again. Richard on his knees, Emma standing calm above him. Captioned simply, Grace after ruin, the woman who chose mercy over revenge. A new dawn stretched over the city, soft, golden, and clean. The skyline no longer whispered Richard Coleman's name. It echoed something purer. Harris Foundation for Renewal. The once scandalous mansion had been transformed into a bright, open workspace. Where gold statues once stood, there were now children's drawings pinned to the walls. Volunteers moved through the hallways, their laughter echoing against the marble that had once known silence and arrogance. Emma walked through the main hall, her heels quiet on the polished floor. The silver ring on her hand caught the morning sun, her mother's words engraved in it. Legacy through mercy. Nora joined her, carrying a tablet. We've opened 3 new scholarship centers this month, she said, smiling. Applications are pouring in. Good, Emma replied softly. Let's keep it simple. Help the ones no one sees. Across the hall, Ruth Lane spoke with architects about a new wing to be built, the Margaret Harris Community Clinic, her father's legacy, alive in brick and purpose. Emma paused beside him, where he sat by the large window, a blanket over his lap. "They're finally calling you what you always were," she said gently, "a builder." Henry Harris smiled faintly, his eyes misty. "And you, my daughter, you became the foundation." For a moment their hands touched, the old and the new, forgiveness and rebirth. A bridge built from pain to peace. Outside, reporters gathered for the official reopening. Cameras clicked, but this time they weren't searching for scandal. They were capturing redemption. Emma stepped to the podium, her voice calm and clear. "There was a time when these walls represented greed and pride," she said, "but today they represent healing. Every stone of this place was rebuilt not by power, but by perseverance." Applause rose softly, not thunderous, but respectful. She continued, "To every woman who has been silenced, betrayed, or forgotten, this is proof that your story isn't over. Pain is not the ending. It's the beginning of understanding your worth." The crowd stood, applause growing, echoing through the open sky. From a distance, a single newspaper headline fluttered in the breeze on a vendor's stand. "From betrayal to blessing, Emma Harris Coleman, the woman who rebuilt her world." As the event ended, Emma stood alone for a moment in the garden, sunlight filtering through the trees. She closed her eyes and let the warmth touch her face. Not the harsh light of exposure, but the soft glow of renewal. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Build for hearts, not headlines." She smiled, whispering, "I finally understand." Nora called from the doorway, "They're waiting for you inside, Mrs. Coleman." Emma turned, eyes calm, shoulders straight. "Tell them I'm coming." She walked back through the glass doors, into the legacy she'd built, not from revenge, but from grace. The camera rose above the mansion, revealing the engraved words on its new entrance arch. "The Harris Foundation, built on forgiveness."